so funny. I think that I think that we used to tell a story about what we would present as a struggle. I'm thinking about my old band again,
Okay.
and
And machine.
machine, and I mentioned that that light instrument that we used to put on stage, and part of being on the road is answering people's questions. Sometimes, right? You sit down somewhere and somebody asks you a bunch of questions,
Yeah.
and I we used to default to this story about like the first times we went out on the road with that thing, and we'd tell the story about how we'd set it up. We'd have like 30 minutes to do it because we weren't the headline act. It was kind of remarkable that we were even allowed to be touring with any kind of custom gear, anything like that.
Yeah.
Um, then we do our show, go hard, and then walk off stage, put these hoodies on, put them up, walk up back on stage as if people weren't going to recognize us, and break down the gear. And we'd have like 15 minutes. We could break it down in half the time that it took us to build it. Uh, and I think the purpose of that story was to be like, listen to like how I don't know how hard we were working or something. I'm trying to put myself in my like 25-year-old
No,
brain.
no, it makes sense what you're talking about. So, if when you think about times that you struggled
Yeah.
in whatever it was, like you were trying a music career,
Mm,
right? You were building your music career. So when you talk about that, it reminds me of how sometimes startups or even small business doesn't even have to be like a tech startup, small business,
mm,
they launch, but they want to give off the presence that they're bigger than they are, or at
yeah.
least have one other employee.
Yeah.
So they'll create an email address,
Right.
say the let's say it's a guy and he's like, well, my name's John at business.com.
Mm,
But when he gets an email, he might CC Sarah at business.com. But Sarah might just her email goes to John.
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they do that so that they can just give off the perception of what they think needs to happen. In some
Yeah.
cases, the dog and pony show has to happen, right?
Yeah.
And you didn't want to be you wanted to be seen as if you were having a road crew with you, that
But
it
then we
wasn't
wanted to
you.
go and tell everybody the story about how it was us. It's interesting. We wanted it both ways, right? We wanted
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, and also, I think the thing that's killing me about that old story, which I know I've told before, um, is, like, just, like, ask any band if that's interesting or challenging, and they'll be like, "What, you've set up your own gear?" Like, imagine the place of privilege that we were in, just the circumstances, so that it would seem interesting that we would have to walk back on stage and take down our gear. That tells me that, when I was in my 20s, that, like, some things were happening fast and that I was skipping a few steps
Yeah.
that maybe not everybody gets to skip, uh, that I would have thought of that as, like, this demonstration of, like, our dedication or something. So it's interesting.
Well, even when you talk about it now, for some reason, it sparks an idea
Yeah.
that maybe that's your shtick.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Because
totally.
a lot of what we talk about with your musical experiences,
Yeah,
what if that was just, you know, part of a routine, a
yeah,
shtick, a skit
yeah,
almost, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Because when you think about all these little vignettes, people create videos. I mean, music videos have made their own form of a comeback
Mm,
on YouTube.
mhm,
And you think about SNL with their shorts, it's almost like you're creating a real life short.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
mhm.
It's just a thought I had. I thought it could be interesting,
Yeah,
be
no,
kind of funny.
definitely. It can ripple through the crowd too. It's a pretty funny experience. Like, I played a show in Boston, a real long time ago, and I'm from Maine, so I had a lot of friends that had moved to Boston,
Yeah.
and, same thing, went out, had to set up our gear after the opening act, and, uh, yeah, so one of my old buddies, could tell that it was me up there, and he started the Swarty chant, and I just I just
How's
re
the Swordy chant go?
"Swarty,
Oh, just
Swarty." And I just remember thinking, "Man, this is so funny. It only takes one," and just like, whew, it
yeah,
goes
yeah.
through the crowd
If
or
it's got
whatever.
the
Yeah.
right vibe, for sure.
Yeah, and I definitely wasn't like a person whose name people knew, you know what I mean? We were the M Machine. That was the only chant we ever got
So,
on occasion.
how did you respond to that when he did that?
I probably just, like, smiled and shuffled off stage awkwardly.
Oh,
That's
okay.
my best guess.
That's funny.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, salad days. I had to look that up.
Oh, you never heard "Salad Days," the phrase?
I have. The context for me was,
Minor Threat?
Mac DeMarco.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, once again, shout out Mac. Yeah.
Okay.
I just wasn't sure if it was supposed to be sort of like your glory days or like the days where like it was more challenging but fun or something. And yeah, I couldn't really get a straight answer on it.
It's just more, when have you had to struggle?
Yeah.
When were you like, "Man, I can't wait to get through this," or
Yeah.
"I had to do this to get to here."
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, whoa, have you had moments like that in your life?
Yeah, of course. I mean,
Well, what's a moment that you've had?
well, it's just I'm finding it interesting that like my brain is just like pushing against that so much. It's very difficult for me to sit here and like I understand the purpose of
Yeah,
the exercise, right? It's like we feel connected when other people have our problems, but then like it's so quickly they shift into champagne problems, and you just yeah,
that's interesting.
yeah,
So
it's a bit of a mindset. I don't necessarily think it's a healthy one.
no, no, but what you're talking about is valid because I think about it, and
Yeah.
I've blocked out a lot of things that I had to do.
Mm,
You know what I mean? Because you're not gonna marinate, and if you did, it's gonna almost impede your forward progress,
right.
right? I never considered that
Yeah.
when this topic was brought up
Yeah.
because we all experience it. And to your point, sharing your story to see if it's of value to others just because the commonality of the struggle,
Right.
it could be anything. It could be addiction. It could be, you had to work a shitty job just to push through,
Yeah.
or you had to learn something very fast,
Yeah.
or there's all kinds of ways that
Yeah.
we've all had to struggle. I mean, it might even be super personal, like family members passing,
Mhm.
close ones, other loved ones passing.
Yeah.
But when you say it in that way, we do. I do believe you because I know that I have
Yeah.
blocked out certain things just because it's going to stop my forward progress.
It's also it also has a lot to do with like community building, I think. And like
Okay.
I think that I have been hesitant. I really believe in the like support groups literally, but then also sort of like zooming out a little bit, like the concept of support, I think is just like it's interesting to me. I think
Okay.
we have a really hard time like sort of growing and taking advice from people who haven't shared our lived experience, right?
Yeah.
But then when you meet that person who has been through something similar to you, suddenly it's like, damn, I'm listening and I'm really actually putting into action some of these things that I'm hearing from that person.
Yeah.
Um, but it's like I think that's extremely valuable, and I also think that if you're not careful, especially when your whole sort of I guess financial mechanism is sharing your art with people,
Hmm.
it's it can be really easy to um, accidentally become a source of like not wisdom, but like advice about stuff that you just don't really have a feel like you have an authority on, or like it would be helpful for you to speak about. Um, and so, yeah, I think part of my hesitation is just like I don't really think that the I don't really think that the challenges that I could sort of like rustle up on the spot right now.
Yeah.
I think that they're super relatable. I mean, just name it, right? It's like creative challenges, I've had them all, right?
Yeah.
Financial challenges, they go on and on and on and on,
Yeah.
and they're deep. And yeah, and the yeah, family and and business. All yeah, there's been issues with all of them, but the place that I feel like I want to support people, the place that I feel like um, I feel safe or sort of like I'm not being overly cavalier
Yeah.
is creative challenges, like wading through and feeding back on and participating in people's like art process.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's the most important thing. I think for a lot of people, there's like way more traumatic and way more difficult circumstances that they need to overcome. But I just don't really. That's not a community that I'm trying to curate because I don't feel like necessarily a source of wisdom there. Whereas I do think there's value in art making. I think it's like
Yeah.
one of the cool things we get to do. It's like one of the things that I think has value on the planet. And I've been trying to do it for a really long time, and it's been challenging for, like, all of those different reasons, and
Yeah.
so, yeah, I think I
What's made it so challenging for you, the creative side?
um, I guess I guess there's issues of, like, identity associated with it,
Okay.
so,
What do you mean by that? Identity.
um, well, Yeah, okay, I guess I could talk about, sort of like the end of the band. That's sort of an interesting.
M Machine.
Yeah,
Okay.
the end of the band, was a decision, and we basically went on hiatus, um, without any intention of coming back. And I took some time off and did some traveling and basically tried to like decouple myself from electronic music producer or songwriter or musician or artist or whatever it was. And um, yeah, the idea was to like do some intentional experimentation surrounding my identity to see if maybe I had a different way I wanted to like participate and a different community that I wanted to build. Um, and maybe a different way to make money.
Okay.
Um, and I was traveling for 6 months, and I spent 3 of those months, the latter 3 of those 6 months, just writing music like crazy.
Okay.
Um, and it was really clarifying. It made me feel like, okay, this tells me that, like, with or without a mechanism to share, with or without a band to tour with, I definitely want to make I definitely wanna make music, and I know I wanna share it too. I was sharing it with my friends, I was sharing it with new people, strangers I was meeting
Yeah.
on the road and stuff, and so that was pretty clear to me. So, I think the struggle there was at the end of something when it was time to reevaluate.
Yeah.
I didn't really have any mentorship or any kind of advice about how I was supposed to do that. And so I feel super lucky. I kind of glommed on to somebody else's adventure and
Okay.
was able to, in a really like a reasonably, actually, honestly, just a cheap way. It was not expensive for me to do that because I was lucky, because I was sort of like plugging into somebody else's adventure. I was able to step outside of my loop, outside of my normal lifestyle, and have a much more sort of like clear image of like what is making me happy. And definitely the parts of the journey that were hard
Mhm.
were easy to see, and the parts of it that were super fulfilling were easy to see. And yeah, just writing music on a laptop, that's the thing that like has not changed since I was, geez, I don't know, 20. Um,
Yeah, man.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I liked where you went with it.
You too?
I really do
Yeah.
because
I don't know.
it was a perspective I didn't, and I didn't have an expectation
Yeah.
when we were talking about this subject or even, before having this discussion, but
Yeah.
it's interesting how you perceived it and where you wanted, to what you wanted to talk about
Yeah.
because some of the stuff you talked about, you even said, you're not necessarily have a whole lot of wisdom in some of these other areas and they might even be more poignant to whatever that person's going through, but the way you talk about it, it's more about and I say this to people because we all have different issues, right? But it's relative to our reality.
Yeah.
So regardless if you're in a third world country with your problems or your first world problems, it's still relative to your reality.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It doesn't it's challenging to judge one over the other because it's relative to your issues.
Right.
And so the way you're talking about it, the perspective you had on it, I just really liked it because I didn't think about it that way.
Yeah.
And so seeing something new like that is pretty cool.
Yeah.
The way you were thinking about it and what you wanted to talk about that you think people would find value in hearing, but
Yeah.
not just what they'd find value in, but what you would want to share.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And
So I liked it.
it goes both ways. Like
Yeah.
there's a everything in balance, right? So like there is an expression of that instinct of mine,
Yeah.
to like to facilitate and to talk about and to be involved with other people who are kind of like wading through some kind of an art practice. Like
Yeah.
the downside to my instinct that uh, I'm sort of like an able-bodied participant is that, I gas up my friends a lot. Like, I have a lot of art makers around me, and
Yeah.
I gas them up. I love what they make, and I in some ways, it makes me feel a little bit old. I don't know if this ever happened to you, but sometimes you, like, encounter an older person who seems to be really excited about what all the kids are up to. It's just awesome. It's just great. They're stoked, you know? It's just like, "Wow, you made that? That's so cool." And I feel I can hear myself sounding like that sometimes, and I got some feedback recently from an artist I really respect. Like, I
Yeah.
love their music, and they sent me an album that they were working on, and I love it. I just think it's sick. And
Okay.
I thought I provided quite a bit of like creative feedback and some constructive criticism, but like There's no question. Overwhelmingly, I was just like, "Fuck yeah, fuck yeah, fuck yeah, fuck yeah, this rules." And, yeah, afterwards, they were kinda like, "I think you were too nice on it. Like, I really want this to be amazing, and so I need some of that, like, harsh feedback." And I was thinking to myself, "Man, I so disagree. Like, put it out today. It's done. It's amazing. The next thing you do is gonna be so much better anyway. Like,
Yeah.
whatever 10, 15% better you think you can get is gonna take you a year. And if you start that next thing now, you'll
You're
be further than you would have been." So, but anyway, I hear myself. I know that it can be a little bit like, I don't know, we do want constructive criticism. We do want like
we want it, but
high touch feedback that is like coming from a place of experience and stuff. And so when you engage somebody who kind of does what you do, but they don't provide that for you, you're kind of like, is this guy just gassing me up? I don't know. I can't tell.
no, I know what you mean when you're saying that
Yeah.
in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It it's its own, skill set, right? To
Yeah.
be able to provide perspective.
Yeah.
It is, and yeah, that's a whole 'nother conversation.
Yeah. All right. Where are we going? I'm ready. What's
Alright.
next? Yeah.